Have you heard of pulled silk corpses? It refers to the bodies of elderly people living alone, decomposing on knitted sofas. Undertakers need to handle them with extreme care, or else limbs can easily detach. But that day, after finishing this job, I realized I was entangled by the old person. My name is Chen Lan, and I am a mortician. I've been in this profession for 11 years. In the southern region, there is a tradition of not taking clients after 6 p.m., according to the elders. It's best to prepare the deceased's appearance in the morning or at noon, when the yang energy is most abundant. Dealing with the dead year-round, it's better to stay honest and true to the trade. I used to be skeptical of this tradition until that incident, which still gives me chills when I think about it. It was winter that year, exceptionally cold, and it got dark by 6 p.m. I was about to close the shop when a man in his 30s, slightly chubby, hurriedly approached, asking me to handle the mortuary affairs for his father that night. Initially, I refused because of the cold weather, wanting to quickly send him away and go home. However, this man appeared kind and sincere, speaking many kind words. Despite my firm stance, he pulled out 10,000 yuan from his bag. Mind you, it was 2013, and 10,000 yuan was quite tempting, considering my monthly mortgage. Looking at those crisp new bills, I couldn't resist and took the job. That night, I grabbed my toolbox and got into the man's car. He drove a brand new Santana, indicating a decent family background. However, the man dressed quite casually. I recognized his down jacket as an old style from Bosadang. Considering he could afford a Santana, he should be considered wealthy. The man's home was in the old part of the city, about half an hour from here, quite far. Bored on the way, we started chatting. From our conversation, I learned that the man's name was Jiang Kang, and he had an older brother 2 years, his senior. Due to early business ventures, both brothers spent most of their time in Shenzhen. The deceased was their father, living alone in the old district of the city. His wife had died early, and the old man died of a heart attack. Being alone at home, nobody noticed his death for a long time. The body started to decompose, emitting a foul smell. The neighbors became suspicious and called the police, who then informed the two sons. Did your brother come back for the funeral? I casually asked. Jiang Kang shook his head in disappointment. My brother is very busy with his business. I thought to myself, he didn't even come back. I didn't say anything more, not wanting to get involved in other people's family matters. After a while, the car stopped at a lane, and I followed Jiang Kang into an old building. Jiang Kang was quite helpful, noticing my tools and offering to carry my toolbox. We went upstairs. Upon opening the door, a strong stench of decaying flesh hit us. I took out 2 masks from my toolbox and handed one to Jiang Kang. Even with the mask on, the smell was unbearable. How long has he been dead? I coughed, suppressed the discomfort in my throat, and put on medical gloves. We walked toward the living room. There was a coffin next to the sofa, but the old man's body was still on the couch. To be honest, having dealt with many corpses, this was one of the more severe cases. The entire face was almost completely decomposed, some areas showing white bones. I lifted the body, and I could faintly hear the sound of pulling silk. Enduring the stench, I put him into the coffin and changed his clothes. However, I noticed some other things next to the corpse and casually took them after finishing the work. It was already 2 a.m. I informed Jiang Kang that they could choose a suitable time, and I would return to finish the burial after the old man was placed in the coffin. Jiang Kang expressed his gratitude repeatedly and personally drove me back home. Before leaving, he handed me a pack of Zhonghua cigarettes. With an extra 10,000 yuan in my pocket, my mood couldn't be better. As I got off Jiang Kang's car, I hummed a tune, walking confidently toward the residential building. However, when I turned the corner, a cold wind blew, and I shivered. Quickly wrapping myself in my coat, I walked on. Just a few steps later, the streetlight above popped and went out. I didn't dare to think too much, hurriedly lowered my head, and went upstairs. After going upstairs, I looked down, and all the lights on the street had gone out, pitch black like an endless abyss. A chill ran through me. That night, I dreamed of the old man. His identity was easily recognizable. I had just handled his body today. His pale face was now covered in livor mortis. Wearing the clothes I had dressed him in during the mortuary process, he walked toward me step by step. When he was about to reach me, I abruptly opened my eyes. Despite the cold weather, my back was drenched in sweat. Could I really be entangled by him? But this thought was quickly dismissed. They say every debt has its debtor, and since I hadn't done anything, I didn't take this matter to heart. However, strange things happened one after another. Every day before going out, I usually lit incense for my father, praying for a smooth day. After all, working in my profession, a bit of belief was necessary. However, the next day, just as I finished lighting the incense and bowing, the incense burner in front of my father's black and white portrait suddenly exploded, scattering ashes all over me. Looking at the fragments on the table, I felt that this scene was somewhat eerie, but this incident only made me suspicious, and I hadn't connected it with the old man's matter. Then, today, when I was driving to a client's house, inexplicably, I encountered a maze-like detour on a familiar road. Even though it was a route I knew well, I found myself circling the same area. Something was wrong. These two incidents made me feel uneasy. My father used to tell me many stories. For instance, some morticians with dirty hands might take advantage of grieving family members and steal valuable jewelry from the deceased. In the end, they faced the deceased's revenge, leading to a miserable fate. At night, after finishing work, I sought out a friend who happened to be a Taoist. Based on my narration, he wasn't sure if I was really entangled, but advised me to sprinkle burnt incense ash at my doorstep. If footprints appeared on it the next day, it meant I was indeed entangled. Wiping the cold sweat from my forehead, I decided to follow my friend's advice. I sprinkled ash at my doorstep and went to bed anxiously. Throughout the night, I kept thinking about it, and my sleep was uneasy. When I woke up the next day, it was just dawn. I saw several white footprints on the cement floor under the bed, extending from the living room to the bedside. It meant that something had approached me while I was sleeping. Thinking about someone standing next to my bed, staring at me while I slept, goosebumps covered my body. It took a while for me to recover. I tried to recall everything that happened during this period, and the only possibility was that I was entangled by that old man. My father once said, the deceased wouldn't entangle others for no reason. I needed to find out why. Why did the old man choose to haunt me? Could it be that taking 10,000 yuan upset him, and he thinks I took too much of his family's money? I rummaged through the cabinet and found the stack of money. The items I took from the old man's house that day scattered out, a wristwatch and a medicine bottle. However, the bottle contained ordinary vitamins, though I decided to return the money and the watch the next day. Honestly, I felt a bit reluctant. It would take me several months to earn this much money, but if I didn't resolve this, the old man would keep following me. Spending a long time with the dead could easily shorten one's lifespan. I hadn't even married or had children yet, and I didn't want to die so early. Sighing, I took out my Nokia and dialed Jiang Kang's number. It rang for a long time before someone picked up. Hello, who's this? I smiled and said, Jiang Ji, it's Chen Lan. I want to return the 10,000 yuan to you. I didn't dare to mention giving back the watch, planning to slip it into Jiang Kang's pocket when the opportunity arose. Originally, I intended to hand him the money in person, but Jiang Kang said he had already returned to Shenzhen. He kept asking why I wanted to return the money, initially hesitant to tell him. I found myself cornered by his persistent questions, and had no choice but to tell him the truth. Upon hearing my words, the voice on the other end sounded even more shocked than I was. You say you're haunted by my dad? I rubbed my forehead and said helplessly, yeah, probably. Give me your account number, and I'll deposit the money and wire it to you tomorrow. I would figure out a way to send the watch to Jiang Kang. After a moment of silence, Jiang Kang said, I'll talk to my brother about this. With that, he hung up. The next day, Jiang Kang hadn't contacted me by daytime. In the evening, feeling restless, I decided to reach out to him. Just then, I received a message from Jiang Kang, saying he was back in the south, and suggesting we meet in a private room at a tea house. I found it strange. Was it necessary for him to come back in person? I had dinner and went to the appointment with 10,000 yuan in hand. Inside the private room, besides Jiang Kang, there was another man I didn't recognize. From his attire, he looked like a Taoist. This is my master, Ming Kun, whom I invited from Qingcheng Mountain. Jiang Kang introduced. I nodded politely to the newcomer, keeping my eyes on Jiang Kang. Jiang Kang seemed to sense our discomfort, changed the topic, and reassured me not to worry about his dad's matter. Ming Kun was a highly paid master, reputed to be skilled. Relieved to hear that, I then extended my hand in courtesy to Ming Kun. However, he only gave me a glance, and showed no intention of shaking hands. I withdrew my hand, took out the money from my bag, handed it to Jiang Kang, and discreetly slipped the watch into his pocket. After completing these actions, I felt much relieved, but my curiosity intensified. Though I sat down in the tea and finally asked the questions lingering in my mind. Hearing my inquiries, Jiang Kang sighed, pondered with knitted brows for a long time, and then began to speak. It turned out that they had invited this Taoist because Jiang Kang was worried about how his father was faring in the afterlife, being mostly absent due to business ventures. The two brothers left their father alone in the south. They felt guilty for not taking good care of him during his lifetime, and now, concerned about his well-being in the afterlife, they had sought Ming Kun's help. Jiang Kang mentioned his father's haunting, apologized to me, and explained that if he hadn't insisted on having me handle the funeral that night, this situation might not have occurred. Feeling uneasy, I rejected his apologies with a wave of my hand. Jiang Kang's hometown wasn't far away, just half an hour by car. We reached his home, and due to the narrow country roads, we had to walk. Afraid that the old man might still bear a grudge against me, I bought some fruits in town before joining them on the path. The old man's grave was grandly constructed, adorned with intricate patterns on the tombstone, custom made in advance. According to Jiang Kang, I respectfully placed the fruits in front of the tombstone. However, Ming Kun kicked them away. Annoyed at my good intentions being trampled on, I was about to protest when Ming Kun continued. He circled the grave, touched the tombstone, and seemed to see something, his face turning serious. Did your dad really die of a heart attack? He asked abruptly. This question caught me off guard. Jiang Kang's face also appeared uneasy as he stammered, yes, that's what the police said. Ming Kun immediately denied it, pointing to the mound behind the tombstone. Impossible. If that were the case, your dad wouldn't have such strong resentment. The only explanation is that he was murdered, and now he has come back as a vengeful spirit. I followed his gaze to the burial mound, and red liquid was oozing out from the soil, resembling blood, seeping onto the front. To anyone witnessing this scene, it would be horrifying, but strangely, Ming Kun's words made me less worried. If the old man was indeed murdered, then it wasn't my problem. I glanced at Jiang Kang, who looked a bit pale with tightly pressed lips. I felt he probably knew more about the situation. Now the question was, if I did kill the person, why did the old man specifically haunt me? Could it be a case of mistaken identity? However, Jiang Kang stuck to his previous statement, urging Ming Kun to perform his ritual. Ming Kun took out several tools from his backpack, a soul-locking chain, a gossip mirror, and then lit a long incense stick, placing it in the incense burner in front of the tombstone. Once the incense burned out, he used the soul-locking chain to encircle the burial mound. Ming Kun's movements were fluid, like flowing clouds in water, leaving me baffled. Finally, he hung the gossip mirror on the tombstone, completing the ritual. Ming Kun clapped his hands. It's done. If there are no more mishaps, contact me again. Jiang Kang, still unsure, asked, are you sure? I've never made a mistake in the tasks I take. Remember to transfer the money to my account. Ming Kun paused, but my method only treats the symptoms, not the root cause. If your dad's grudge is too strong, he could break out of my seal. To completely solve this issue, it's best to find out your dad's real cause of death and address it directly. Jiang Kang hesitated before saying, okay. After that, Jiang Kang drove us back to the city. Ming Kun was the first to get off, followed by me, but just as I was about to exit the car, Jiang Kang stopped me. His expression was extremely odd, and he seemed to be struggling to say something, piquing my curiosity. Do you have a moment?